welcome back to PA Chalk Up. I'm your host Manny, and today we have a special guest. We've got Bryan Mann. How are we doing?
Doing well, Manny. How you doing?
I'm good. You're actually someone that's been very highly requested. After our dinner, people are like, "When's Bryan coming on?" I'm like, "I'm trying. He's a busy guy."
Yeah. That's an understatement sometimes, but we made it happen. I know you had to stay on me for a while, but we did make it happen.
Nah, it's all good. Like what I mentioned in the when we did meet, like things in the S&C move so quick, like all the time. They like
Yeah.
if you're not rolling with the punches, you're getting left behind.
Oh, 100%.
Um, so before we start, and I've kind of heard snippets of the story, but how did you get introduced to S&C, and how did you start wanting to become a strength coach? Start wanting to learn more about the body and how performance is developed from that.
Yeah, well, it all started way back in the day. If anybody's watching this online, I don't know if this is a YouTube or only audio, but or if people have seen a picture of me, it's no surprise I got a large red birthmark on my face, and I was teased mercilessly for it. And there were some other things that were going on in some other levels. And then I got to thinking, I'm like, you know what? Seeing in the back of the comic books that little weakling and whatever, and I wasn't a little tiny weakling. I was big anyways. I was a chunky kid, and well, still am. But I decided I wanted to start lifting weights because I thought if I got bigger and stronger than everybody, well, they would leave me alone. And by my freshman year in high school, I was already one of the strongest guys in my school of like 2,000 people. And then, by my junior year, I won a state championship in powerlifting. And then I believe I won the national championship that year as well. And then, I went on to compete really well in it. Well, during that time of me lifting weights, my mom saw a flyer for a strength and conditioning camp that was there locally at Southwest Missouri State University. Now it's Missouri State. Well, Rob Rogers, Kirk Woolfolk, and Russ Ball were the three individuals who were putting that on. Now, Kirk, I understand, just recently retired from the Naval Academy, where he was the director there forever. After SMS, he went to be the director of Notre Dame. Notre Dame, he went to Navy, got one of those tenured positions, and stayed there for the rest of his career. And but by God, I don't blame him. That's a beautiful area, and if you have a tenured position that you can't get fired from, why leave? Russ Ball was a strength and conditioning coach for the Chiefs at that point in time, and then he went into the flip side of it. He went into the front office, where he's still the front office guy for the Green Bay Packers, last that I'd heard. And Rob Rogers is still within the tactical strength and conditioning environment. And whenever I went there, I talked with those three coaches. And I'd already had several years of strength training under my belt at that point. I think 2 years under my belt at that point in time. And I was asking them about this as a profession and what books could I read. And I'll be danged if these guys that didn't have decades in the profession were talking to a 14-year-old kid. Now, I was 13. I hadn't turned 14 yet. I hadn't had crossed my birthday, like a grown ass man. And they gave me, I probably, if I would have thought of it, I would have gone and dug out the book. I've probably got it or the backup copy of it somewhere, but Strength Speed Training for Football by E.J. Creeds was the book that they gave me, and I digested it. And then I started, knowing that that's what I wanted to do. And there's this old baseball player in the States, a guy named Yogi Berra. And he had those, one liners that at first you're like, that doesn't make any sense. And then whenever you stop and you look at it, you see the wisdom. And he said, if there's a fork in the road, pick it up. And what he's really talking about was opportunity, not just like, oh, so that way you don't pierce your tires. Nah, you see a fork in the road, you go left, you go right. It doesn't matter. Take one and go with it. Well, I knew I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach from those meetings with those individuals. And I'd been reading and powerlifting and preparing my body and knowing and sharpening my mind to be able to seize the opportunity whenever it came. Well, that opportunity came one day while I was hungover, skipping one class to study for another one in front of the Taco Bell in the stadium. So I had bean burritos and an unlimited supply of caffeine to keep me going. And I was studying for an organic chemistry exam. Well, one of my friends from high school was on the football team, and he was talking to me. And the head strength coach, a guy named Rick Perry, was walking across the way. And Pat said to Rick, He's like, "Hey, this is my buddy Brian. He just won. I can't remember what I had just won in powerlifting at that point in time." He's like, "Yeah, you look like a big fella, knows how to lift weights. I got to, if you want a job, I can't pay you anything, but but you're more than welcome to take it." And I'm like, I knew what I wanted to do, so that was it. So I saw that opportunity. I go, "Yes, sir. Are you going up there now? I would love to do it. I don't care if it's free." I closed my book, and the rest is history. I went on and worked for Rick for 5 years as a undergraduate. It's like, oh, 5 years as an undergraduate. Yeah, well, I spent 6 years there. I had a little incident that made me take a little bit longer to graduate, but that's probably not for this podcast. And I'd probably have a different warning on there for that. But, um, that's where I got my start. And I knew what I wanted to do. And it was all gas, no brakes until 2025 so far. And that happened in about 99.
This is a quick shout out to our main sponsor on this channel, TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is an all-in-one platform that hosts programs, questionnaires, testing, anything that you may need for your athlete's performance, you can host it in TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr also now has two different sides, which is OS and Practice. For more information on TeamBuildr, check out the link in the description. And if you use code PAChalkup all together, you will get a 30-day free trial. Nice. What gets you fired up nowadays in strength and conditioning and the human development area?
Well, there's a couple of things. Of course, I'm always looking to see, what are the different ways to look at it? How can we get more information from things? And that always drives me, finding that next thing. It's like I'm a prospector in the 1800s, I'm like that German guy that they thought was Dutch for the Lost Dutchman mine. I'm going down in there, I'm seeing what I can find, bringing stuff back up to the surface and getting excited about it. And if it's from very new ways to analyze the data that's already taken, if it's ways of training that we can apply to other populations, like we've had several articles. A former student of mine that I recruited at Miami as a bachelor student. I wanted him to come be a doctoral student. Well, he's still doing his PhD down there with a guy named Joe Signorelli. But we've done some stuff, taking velocity based training and applying it to Parkinson's and other populations where obviously you have to scale that kind of training. Because,
Mm,
I mean, some 70-year-old with Parkinson's isn't going to be stepping off a 60 centimeter
but
box and doing a
yeah.
depth jump. I mean, absolutely not. But there are things that we can take that we just have to scale them appropriately. And then they can train and see massive improvement. So those are a couple of things that really get me fired up. And if anybody knows me, sometimes I get super fired up by seeing some of this stupid crap that's online, like, oh, dorsiflexion has nothing to do with squat depth. Anybody who says otherwise is a moron. Like, yo, man, you just showed how stupid you are because the foot bone's connected to the ankle bone, the ankle bone's connected to the leg bone. This stuff's all connected. So if you think one thing doesn't impact the other, you're either stupid or a charlatan, and I'm not sure which one it is. But either way, I ain't gonna listen to you.
Mm.
And at some point in time, I'm probably not going to be able to hold my mouth anymore, and I'm just going to go on a curb stomping campaign. I hit those on a regular where I'm just like, man, I can't handle this.
Um, I would say you're a very patient man because I'm getting close to that too, and I'm a decade in.
Hey, this is because I stay off social media for the most part. Every time I get on there, I get mad. So, yeah, I've been taking a
um,
little break, but I'll get back to it.
yeah, when you kind of mentioned VBT, and we've had a conversation about VBT previously. I've got this theory where when something's emerging in the industry, you're kind of classed as mad, but I
Yeah.
class that as being a mad scientist, where
Mhm.
you're yeah, you're mad because you're obsessing over this area, but you're a scientist because you're experimenting with it and seeing what can be done with it. Obviously, you were called that mad for a while with the VBT, and we kind of spoke about this. How has that developed for you, and how are you sort of seeing it becoming more integrated into S&C and more emerging in this field?
That's an excellent question, and there's going to be some things that I'm trying to right the ship of because I noticed that I was wrong over time. So hopefully this March or April, I'm going to be uh, doing a seminar over here in the States. There's a couple of places that I might look at doing them, and moving from what I'm calling the slide rule to AI. What I
Mm,
mean by that is, and I think we probably use this. example at dinner, but the transfer index from Zatsiorsky, right? And some people know about it, some people don't. That's okay. It's in Science and Practice. It's in every one of their editions. I don't think it's going to leave. This was a way that Zatsiorsky looked and tried to see what was the impact of one training variable on the outcome. And he just used effect sizes to be able to do it. Now, current statisticians like, this is stupid. It is just a ratio. The numerator can drive the denominator and vice versa. And they're absolutely right. Like, regressions would be far better to be able to do this. No, you're 100% true. But you know how you had to calculate a regression analysis back in the 1950s and 60s? By hand.
by hand.
So that's why Zatsiorsky, I'm assuming, and I've never asked him this, uh, did the transference index the way that he did. It's like it's not the best thing in the world, but it was pretty dang good, especially for the ability to use the slide rule. Now, whenever I did VBT, we have to remember that in 2003, the only device that was available was the Tendofitridine, not even the weightlifting analyzer. And that only gave you feet per second and meters per second outputs. So of course, we're going to have to go and do things in a way that follows at least common denominator. Well, and then it's like, well, then what about the zones? Yeah, because everybody was in about 0.06, 0.07, not everybody. The most of the team, it filled around a bell curve that they're around 0.06, 0.07 meters per second off. So they're about 7%, 8% off. I'm willing to handle that kind of error.
Mm.
But then there's going to be people, of course, that it didn't apply to because they were on outlier on either end, on the extreme great or on the extreme crap. Well, I would alter for the extreme great, but I didn't alter for the extreme crap. Some people say, why not? Because those people my job didn't depend upon. I was going to take care of those others. Well, now with AI, where we're going to go is the get away from zones. We don't have to worry about. I know. I say we. I know that I personally cannot keep track of, even if it was 25 people at the same time. I can't keep track of 25 individual low velocity profiles. I can't. But I could keep track of that one speed and keep everybody else on the same page.
Hmm.
Well, now with the implementation and integration of AI within a lot of these devices, even if they don't know they have the capability to do this yet, I know that they've got the capability to do it from some of the work that we're doing on AI, not me doing it, but some of the other people that are my colleagues here. They can absolutely throw those individual datas up there, right? They just got to find the right equation to do it. So I want to move from, let's go from this zoned approach to what is more perfect, because now it's not about group management. I don't
Hmm.
have to manage the group anymore with that because the AI is handling that for me. So, that's one of the directions that we're going to go. But yeah, being called that madman and everything, that bothered me for a long time. But I felt like I was right.
Hmm.
And I kept pushing that. Hey, you know what? We have to train and get strong. And anybody who says that I don't say that you need to get strong too, obviously hasn't read the message or know who I am. I'm a power lifter, for Christ's sake. So yeah, no, I think strength has a point, but it's not the only thing. Otherwise, I would have been in the NFL, right? As one of the strongest people on the face of the earth. So it makes no sense. I just want to make sure that that if when people look back on me historically, if I do register on that, people like the Stones and the Kramers who changed the industry, hopefully they'll remember that one of the things that I was trying to say is that we got to train to get fast too in the weight room. Now, it might have been conceptually right and organizingly wrong, meaning that, hey, yeah, if you got high school kids, Division II kids, doesn't fit. But the zones work amazing for Division I football, NFL, baseball. If you're like our baseball team was at Missouri State, where our weightlifting team had a baseball problem, but we still did pretty good because we went to the College World Series. We just got those different aspects and things to look at and examine.
So something I've been talking about recently is context in the weight room, and it's kind of something to what you're alluding just now. It's the test, like the ideal tests might be great for Division 1, but like where does the high school fit into that? Like what
Yeah.
are their metrics? And I don't think we could look at national or even country, like national or international levels, because like each team will be different. So it's like
Yeah.
it's really standardizing your results to your team and how you can make incremental changes on that, not national or international level. Our next sponsor is Apex Cool Labs. Apex Cool Labs is a pump cooling device that helps you gain further performance by cooling, aids the recovery so you can perform more for longer. To check out what Apex Cool Labs have, there's a link in the description.
Yeah, and that's going to take some work statistically for the high school coaches, and hopefully they would have the time to be able to do that, or that hopefully there's a product that exists or will exist in the near future that'll say, hey, if this, then that. Here's what their
Mm.
individuals training. Maybe you should look at doing this. So I think yeah, that's huge. I was just uh, I'm writing an article for a website. What website? Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out. But talking about the momentum work, was using an example 10 minutes ago that I use in class a lot of the water bottle. Right. So if I hold this electrolyte bottle up, it is 828 mils. Right. Why 828 mils? Because that's 28 ounces. I'm in the U.S. This would probably just be a liter bottle over where you are. But what happens if I'm super thirsty and I want to fit 40 ounces, a liter and a half in this bottle? Because I'm thirsty. What happens? Well, it just all overflows and goes onto the floor. Well, that's a lot like not having the context of what you need to train for adaptation, right? So if my strength and hypertrophy jug is already full, doing more in strength and hypertrophy work just overflows, and you do not see a further improvement in sport. You need to change up your exercises. And to borrow from Anatoly Bondarchuk's terminology, you got your more intensive exercise classification. Maybe you need a special developmental exercise or a special preparatory exercise or the competitive exercise to further facilitate things. We just have to pay attention and know that just because your squat went up doesn't mean that you're a better athlete. What are the KPIs of the sport? Maybe it's sprint time, speed, maybe it's sprint momentum, change of direction ability, jumping height, for volleyball and basketball. Whatever those KPIs happen to be, that's what you need to look at and see, is that changing? Is my training improving those things? And if it's not, what am I doing? We're also looking at the decrease of injury risk. I'm not going to say that that's not valuable towards performance, since the greatest ability is available. So yeah, if you're not seeing a reduction in injury rates or improvements in KPIs, I think that I'm not going to say that the training was meaningless, but it definitely has a decreased value in comparison to what I think could be.
hmm I've sort of touched on the Italian Strength and Conditioning Society with you. So I've done a couple speaking engagements for them, and I have this slide where we talk about bucket filling and do we need all the buckets filled? Like
I don't think you do.
depends on the sport. Like
Yeah,
some sports might need a bit higher speed, or other sports might need a bit decreased and increased strength. Like it's and
yeah,
again, we can go individual. Like what's your athlete's position? What's their
yeah,
role within the team?
100%.
I have this great brain teaser in one of my presentations, and it's like, do you need to make any considerations if your athlete needs to, or like your athlete's a natural shit talker during the performance? They're going to need a little bit more cardio, because if they're
Yeah,
going to keep that up for 90, 80 minutes, they're they're going to be a little bit fitter.
you got to have the one to be able to talk smack. Shoot, I know I talk smack all day, but then again, my fitness is crap. So
But it's this thought of like, again, the bucket system is a really good way to box things and make a more complex idea and like simplify a little bit. But
yeah,
it's contextual. Like, is my
absolutely,
athlete going to need to sprint 21 miles an hour in every play? Probably not, but he's probably going to need some stamina to do it, like that
yeah.
repeated ability to sprint.
And you're reminding me a lot about a paper right now by Baker and Dan Baker, a really good friend of mine down at, well, now he's in Bali. He used to be in Australia. And Rob Newton, the Rob Newton, kind of like the Bill Cream. Well, they were mentioning in there that for the bigger positions, unfortunately I'm not a rugby guy. I didn't grow up playing it, so I will mess up
I
the
am.
position. So basically the guys in the scrum, your props and whatever those guys are. Uh, the
So prop hooker prop.
yeah, right. Okay, so with those guys, It was not the speed of the individual, but the bigger individuals who were just as fast that were the better players. Now, that same thing did not happen for the, was it the winger? Is that the last fast little dude just
Yes.
sprint his ass off? So for that position, yeah, it was just speed. So even on the same sport, and American football is no different. I'm sorry, basketball is no different. That each position is going to have individual demands, and if you try and train everybody the same way, some people are getting what they need. Some people are getting stuff that's going to make them worse. Because if I start throwing weight on that winger and slow him down, even though his momentum is higher, his ability to get from point A to point B, which is actually the most important thing for him, has gone down. So he ends up being a worse player.
I've been talking a lot about asymmetries and how important they can be.
Mm-hmm,
Um, I think so. This conversation came about with the Nord boards from Vald. Obviously,
mm-hmm.
you can see asymmetries really well on hamstrings there, but it got to this discussion of like how important is asymmetries and what's a comfortable percentage to have asymmetries, because obviously sport is inherently asymmetrical, right? People will be
Absolutely.
dominant on one side compared to the other. um, Again, I had Sean Swetnam from UCLA saying he's comfortable with. I think he said something like 8 to 3. I've had coaches being like 13 is a good cutoff point. What are your thoughts on asymmetries and how that actually can impact the performance if we try and reduce them as much as possible?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that we have to look at not only what is the asymmetry, but what is the variance between the repetitions, right?
Mm,
Because if we're taking one snapshot that maybe this guy was just dehydrated this day and his right hammy felt like it was going to pull, so he couldn't pull it as hard with it. He saw a 15% that day, and to answer the question, 15% is about kind of where I start. Like, hey, is this okay? But if I am 15% with a low coefficient of variance, if I have low variance, that I'm always doing it like that, that's more indicative of a problem to me, right? Because there's a study that Paul Comfort did, and I don't know
mhm.
if he talked about it at the conference that we were at or not, or if it was just him and I talking about it, because he and John and I were talking some jump stuff. Uh, but whenever you're doing a counter movement jump, it's tough to look at the symmetries because you're not going to be on the same leg during each of the phases. You're going to bounce back and forth, and even every repetition they should be different because of that you're solving a new problem. So I don't know if there is this really exact cutoff that people are using, and I don't know if it's a good thing to necessarily do. I mean, I've got
It's
no
too
problem
much.
saying 15%. It's like, yeah, after that, let's take a look. Okay.
Mm,
But it's like, okay, well, let's take a look. Well, maybe this person's on the outside on the right, so that they're going to be pushing off of their right to move into the left every time. So, of course, that right side's going to be stronger. How much stronger? Well, does this person have a history of injury? Like if I've got a starter for 4 years and they've got an 18% and they've always had an 18% asymmetry, well, that's probably just specific adaptations to imposed demands, as opposed to, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's an asymmetry, but it's a functional asymmetry, one that's been created as a result of what they do all the time. It's not something that needs to be corrected. Hell, that might slow them down. That might mess up their
mm.
coordination. So, it just, what I'm saying is that I don't know if we can look at asymmetries as this thing that we place up on a pedestal. How does that person perform? And whenever they start performing away from what is their baseline, that's whenever I start to worry a little bit, even if it's returning to more symmetrical. I'll have talks with the athletic trainer or physical therapist whenever I was doing this at Miami. I would be like, "Hey, Jules, this is changing. What's going? You doing something here?" Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, no, it doesn't make sense. Okay, well, let's have more of a conversation. Let's bring them in. There's no absolutes. And that's what I
Mhm.
think everybody has to realize is that we're dealing with human organisms. And then we could even go back to my example of like, well, and if they did this for 4 years and they never saw an injury, yeah, well, maybe they didn't have the right circumstance. Maybe they weren't, exposed to it, and maybe I'm wrong because of that. That maybe they should have gotten hurt. Because hey, if your injury risk goes up to for a certain injury goes up to 20%, that's huge, right? That's a huge injury risk. But what does that also say? I got an 80% chance of being healthy.
Mhm.
And we got to make sure that we're not following into the stuff that leads into gambling addiction, thinking that, well, these last 8 of them, they were safe, so these next 2 I got to bet on this because this is a thing. No, man, every repetition is the same. It's the same odds every rep. So that's something that we have to realize too, that we might be hanging our hat on something that isn't a problem to begin with.
Mm.
So what I think is just be careful and start to look at injury odds ratios, right? And see,
Yeah.
is this going up for this individual like this or not?
I think it also goes back to that thing, like sport is obviously a high risk industry, we'll say.
Oh,
Like,
dude, man, last year I'm kind of fired up about this because I'm getting ready to go into a meeting tomorrow where somebody brought this thing up about uh, that they're trying to eliminate the possibilities of injuries in their class, and it was a class that had to deal with sport. And I said the only way that you can eliminate the injuries from it is to not do it and just sit down and have a lecture. There's
yeah,
inherent risk in anything. I could go walk across the street and get smoked by a car, and there is inherent risk in everything, and we just have to realize that that is what we have signed up for. And if you got a problem with it, then you probably ought to go play tiddlywinks.
yep,
Let's get down to brass tacks and let's worry about what matters.
100%. And I think because we are in such a high risk industry, we obviously have to know where the stimuli that we're trying to implement on our athletes, like how does that match with the injury risk? So like to
Yeah,
become a better performer, you need to push closer to that injury barrier
and it
than
could be the opposite too,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Because you being in England, right? Probably remember a guy named Greg Rutherford, right? Gold
Mhm.
medalist in the long jump. I'm getting old, so I can't remember which Olympic cycle. But what Greg's training, he's got. If you probably look it up, you could see all the injuries that he had over the year. And anytime Greg would be training anything seriously, days, multiple days in a row, he got hurt. So what Dan Paff basically did was he did the opposite. He pulled everything else away and saw what can we do and stay healthy, as opposed to figuring out what was the maximum amount that and I guess really it is the same. What was the maximum amount that he could tolerate? Well, it was about a third of what he was given to begin with. So, yeah, we could see Olympic Games, Beijing, China is 10th. Hell, where is it? I was going the other way.
Yeah,
So,
Brazil. He
okay, it
was in
wasn't
Rio.
gold, it was bronze medal. He got an Oh, yeah, Olympic Games in 2012 in London. He got the gold, and then he got the bronze in Rio. So, this guy was able to medal by reducing the training that he has done. And I highly recommend, Dan Paff talked about this in San Antonio at the NSCA Coaches Conference. I think it was the same year JB Marin spoke.
Mhm.
So anybody could probably look that up and find out which talk it was pretty easily. And he talked about how much they had to remove just to keep him healthy. And if he could stay healthy, he would medal. And you could just look at those results that you pulled up and to see that he was crap, and then he got healthy and he was good. Sometimes we think that these athletes can handle all this crap, but we have to realize stress is systemic. And
Mhm.
it's not just what you're putting on them, it's what the person's gone through in their past, right? And that could either decrease or increase the ability of what they could tolerate, right? There's not
100%.
one size fits all.
I also think so I've been told, obviously I wasn't there, but you did a presentation Summer Strong, and you spoke about this idea of stress is stress, which I completely
Mhm.
agree. And I think it's kind of what you're alluding to, like even if it's so if we're in a collegiate setting, even if it's assessments, exams, hand-ins, whatever it is, that's stress. If we then go into the weight room with them and be like, hey, we're doing a super heavy week, their
Yeah,
tolerance to whatever you're trying to implement is going to be reduced because of that. And then
dude.
injury risks
Yeah.
go up, everything else goes up because of that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And, I really noticed that retrospectively whenever I was doing the paper on the effects of academic stress on I can't remember what it was called. It was a stress paper for Division One football. So the long story short, whenever I was doing this and we saw whenever the injury spiked, I happened to have my stuff together still from my undergraduate, and I went back and I looked at it So what was the paper? That whenever academic stress spiked, we went up and were actually more likely to get hurt during a test week than we were during training camp. Now, whenever I was doing that, I went back. Yep, that's it right there. Effects of physical and academic stress on illness and injuries. Division One football, college football players. So me and Kirk Bryant, Brick Johnstone, Pat Ivy. Great paper. If you haven't read it, I'm sure it'll cure insomnia. Uh, but whenever I was doing it, I was like, man, I wonder, because I could remember this one training cycle that Rick and I had put the guys through at SMS, and everything was Prilipin charted. I mean, our assistants' work was money. They had like 3 sets of two at like 90, 92%, then a deload week, and then test. That's the way we ran it every time. And these 92%, man, they were flying. They were just, it was the bars were rattling, the weights were rattling with how
Mm,
fast the guys were standing up. And we're all fired up. We can't wait for the test day. And then test day comes around and they tank. They're getting pinned by 80, 85%. And we're like, what did we do wrong? Was it the deload? Was it this? Was it that? Was it the other? Couldn't figure it out. I pulled out my syllabus because I was an undergraduate at that time. Damned if that wasn't during midterms.
mm,
So, our strength numbers were shot as a result of whenever we tested. What if we would have pushed everything back a week or up a week? I bet we would have had amazing numbers. But, stress being systemic, it is called a stress syndrome for a reason. It is a specific output to non-specific inputs, and uh, people call those mannerisms sometimes, and they mean it by man having two ends in it. That I make words up sometimes. Um, but yeah, yeah. So that's what
we've
it was.
we've got something similar with Coach Markisms.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's an inherited role that you play.
yeah. You're just trying to think of examples and how to explain it to somebody, and it's like, well, if I explain it the way that it actually is, you're probably not going to understand it because we got to go in 7 different freaking
Mhm,
classes before we can get to the point. So I'll just explain it to you the easiest way that I understand it.
mhm. So one thing that I told Coach Mark in my exit interview is like, as an intern, you kind of have to be half mind readers into what you mean, and
Yeah,
it's this thing of like, you get one piece and you kind of have to like see where their head is at and like sort of try and figure it like all the other pieces to make sure that the drill runs, and
yeah.
it's very fun to try and read people's minds.
Yeah, that's yep. Yeah. Being a mind reader is something it's a natural talent, man. It's a natural talent.
Uh, I've got a story that I would kind of want you to elaborate on a little bit. So I had Bert Sorn in, and he was mentioning this concept that he had really bad knee pain, and he started like floating heel squats,
Mhm.
and then obviously you were dealing with something similar, and he told you about it, and it kind of changed and adapted this process. Now, when we were at the IUSCA conference together, JB Moran kind of touched on the foot complex and how the toe is actually a very integral part in movement patterns and sprint ability. What what was your take from all of this? Like, so from the floating heel to the toe concept now.
The floating heel concept, I think that it changes. So, yeah, obviously, your foot is where you have to produce force, right? And so then we limit the position of the foot and how much you can produce force. And then when that heel starts floating, well, then the calf has to work differently and start to work as a brace. And whenever it did that, it felt like it unlocked a little bit of dorsiflexion there and allowed for me to hit, a deeper position on the squat. It was out in LA whenever Bert got me to do that at, it used to call the Mamba Sports Performance Facility. It's Sport Academy, is what it's called now. Now, it's like I don't have anything on it, but we could probably get a master student or a doctoral student on it who does EMG that needs something. But I really think that increased utilization of the lower limb, it just changes things, and then it unlocked dorsiflexion. Because it's kind of like training your hip flexors lengthens the hip flexors. Well, I think that everybody's got a dorsiflexion restriction because of multiple reasons. One, we sit too much, and if we sit where our feet, well, they're not pulled back underneath us; they are placed out in front of us, and that puts us in plantar flexion. most of the time. And then what else do we have? Well, if you look down at your shoe, how is the back of the shoe to the front of the shoe? It's elevated. So we're always in this position of plantar flexion and never getting way into the dorsiflexion. So I think that whenever the plantar flexors had to contract eccentrically and isometrically to maintain a position while the knee and the hip were moving, and also have to lengthen out even a little bit more while it's being contracted, I think it might stress or send a signal to the nervous system that, hey, we can relax here a little bit and allow a little bit more range of motion. I don't know if that's exactly what happens, but that's kind of what I felt in my body. And then, relaying what I feel in my body to what I know about movement and physiology. I
Mm.
think that we could probably do some EMG studies on it. I completely forgot about this. I think that I could talk with some people. Maybe we could do some EMGs on it and see, is there a difference in the calf? Is there a difference in the activation of the calf, a different activation of the quads and hamstrings and glutes? Timing, amount, what? Uh, we'll have to I'll have to talk to a couple of people to make sure that we control for the right things. I just
Yeah.
don't know what the right things are going to be there because that's not my area of research. But you know what? It is Jenny Yentis's. So I'll let
I
Dr. Yentis be Dr. Yentis.
I shotgun first read of that.
Yeah.
um, I think as well when we were together, we were talking a lot about the history of strength and conditioning, and it's something that
Mhm.
again, Coach Mac got you to do, and I've been loving every time you've done them. Is that Throwback Thursday?
Oh shit!
Um,
It's Thursday too. I need to do another one. I'll find time to slip it in.
Perfect. Yes, let's go. um, but something that you kind of mentioned during our conversation is that you got exposed to a lot of, I forgot what you called them, but it was like a stack of reels or
Oh yeah, it's all
papers.
lithographs. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like before Xerox, it was a lithograph. Yeah, to the start of powerlifting. Hell, it was crazy, and I would love just to. Fortunately, some of the other people were always late, and I was always early. So I would sit there and read some of those things. I don't think Bill knows that I was doing that. But I would sit there and read some of those things while I was waiting for everybody else to show up. But I would make sure that I would do it in front of a fan. There was no air conditioning. It was climate controlled. The climate controlled what you did. So I'd make sure I wasn't sweating or anything before I read any of those because the paper was, dude, 50, 60 years. But just being there and seeing those documents and reading some of them, and a lot of them were not legible anymore because they were too just faded. But it was, just incredible to see the origins of how things started, who said what, in what manner, because they would take some big notes. And there was one of them that I'm leaving names out, but somebody said, "You powerlifters, a bunch of goons," and Bill Clark said, "I'll clean your clock. Let's go outside." I'm like, "Well, Bill, I think you kind of proved his point there, didn't you?" And he well, I guess I just said who was the one
Yep.
that said, "I'll stay
I can bleep
outside."
that out. I can bleep it
Yeah.
out.
Hey, he's 93. I don't think he gets online. He won't ever hear of it. But
um,
but it was just being able to see those things, man. That was just so cool.
what are some of the like memorable things that you read that you're like, damn, that's interesting?
It's not so much the stuff that I read, but it was the stories that Bill would tell and be around. So I didn't know that I was in a piece of history.
Mm,
Are you familiar with the Zercher Squad?
yes.
So it actually
So
started in the
yeah,
gym.
sorry.
Yeah, in the gym in Clark's gym, and also in the correctional facility in Jefferson City, Missouri, a state correctional facility. See, Ed Zercher was a prison guard, and he liked lifting
Mm,
weights. And he had invented this deadlift where he would pull it up, kind of deadlift it up to his knees, drop down underneath it, put it in the crook of his elbows, stand up with it, and return it to the floor in the same manner. Now, Ed just was doing this to mess around, but people started looking at him and saying, "Hey, that's kind of cool. What do you call that?" And he said, because he didn't want to say I made it up, that you got to realize this was back in the 60s or 70s. He said it's an Australian deadlift. Well, how many people in Australia came to the States? Nobody. So people were calling it Australian deadlift until they got to a world championship and said, "Hey, how much can you Australian deadlift?" And the guy looks at him and says, "Australian deadlift? What the hell is that?" And then he showed the guy what it was, and he's like, "I have never seen that before in my life." And then the cat was out of the bag, and that's whenever it just became called the Zercher lift. And then Louis Simmons, man, this would be a hell of a throwback there. So I'll wait and I'll put it out some other time. But
so this episode won't be out for a while.
oh well, shoot, maybe I'll do it today then. But then Lou came along and just did the top end of it and called it a Zercher squat, right? And then now there's Zercher dead, Zercher good morning, Zercher this, Zercher that, and it was all because of one guy, and he wanted to do it his way, and just to have something different and do it for fun. And I've used the Zercher. I really love it for hammer throwers, in terms of
Mm.
athletes and grapplers as well. I really liked it for them since I felt like it overloaded that shoulder and neck girdle that they were going to have to overcome the forces from, obviously, in the hammer with them sitting back and leaning against the ball. And then the wrestler, obviously, it's their opponent that they're having to control. But I really enjoyed them for those populations.
Nice. I think that's one of the biggest things that I love about this industry, and it was kind of what me and Bert were talking about. Is like obviously to progress, we have to tip our hats to what came before, and
Yeah,
I had mentioned that Brian Shaw, he's collecting the OG equipment that
nice.
powerlifters, strongman
Strong
were
man.
using. Back when, and like his gym is insane, so like I'll watch those videos and just be like, damn, like that's a unique piece of history. But like then it goes like further, like where did the lifts come from? And again, you've already put this one out so we can talk about it, but it was like the initial squat depth, where that came
Yeah,
from, how was that developed for to standardize across the whole industry. The Zercher squat I didn't know about, so that's quite interesting too.
yeah, yeah. It just, if you don't know, I think about things a little bit differently because of my father. And, there's good things about my dad. There's bad things about my childhood too, right? But I did learn a lot and I did take a lot from him. And he would always teach in stories, but they always related back to the military. And one story that he told, and I actually started off a talk at the NSCA about this a few years ago, was this story that he told. And I don't know if this story's true or if it's just a good story, good parable about this guy that took over an outpost, right? He became the commanding officer of an outpost, probably lieutenant colonel, colonel major, somewhere around there. And he sees these guys patrolling around this concrete pad 24/7. It's like the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which that is a thing in the States where they patrol around 24/7. So there is like a trench where these people walk through. Couldn't figure out why it was there. So he goes back in the command logs to find out where this original order came from, and he just starts calling the previous commanding officer, like, I don't know, it was just there, so I kept it while I did it. And then he gets all the way back to where it first was coming out from, like, I don't know, 30 years before, 20 years, a long time before. The guy is dead, who was the commanding officer, so he calls his right hand man, and the guy starts he says, "Hey, Major blah blah blah, would you, care to tell me what is going on here with this order? Why it was put in?" And the guy just dies laughing, and he's like, "They're what? They're still doing that?" And it turned out that just to be quick, that apparently they had done this concrete pad to make like a basketball court or something. Well, the soldiers there ended up drawing penises in the concrete. So they can't have that there. They had to bust it out and re-pour the pad. So while it was being poured and while it was curing, the commanding officer put a patrol on. Well, that dude had a heart attack and died before that was finished. So that order never came off the books. So people were walking around for 30 or 40 years while, doing this patrol just for concrete to cure. And I know it don't take that dang long, right? So we got to know why we do things. Where do these things come from? What is the origination? Are we doing something just because somebody thought it was a great idea back in the day? Are we doing this just because somebody's punter kicked 40 yards? And that was his average punt. So now everybody sprints 40 yards. It had nothing to do with performance. It had everything to do with figuring out who should be the guy on the right and the left to cover. That was it. Now it's used for everything. So if we don't know what we're doing, don't know where everything comes from, we're bound to get fooled many
Mhm.
times over.
I have this amazing story that Paul Comfort told on the podcast, and he was doing a research. I forget what the specific research was, but
I think is this
he
about the
got
isometric dipole positions?
no. It was about
Okay, you go on.
oh damn, I really can't remember. I'll pull it out. But he was talking about like he sent this paper for submission, and he got a return with just one paragraph that was off, and all it said is like where is this idea coming from? So Paul was like, I have actually no idea. So he went back 40 years worth of research papers to be like, where is this actually coming from? And what could have very easily been just a quick correction sentence, he took like months to really find out where it was coming from. And it's this idea of obsession over knowing where things is and why that thing originally started. And it's
Yeah,
it's kind of to what you're alluding to. It's like, where is our information coming from? Is it still applicable? What's the context? Again, I think this podcast just been about context.
yeah,
um,
you're right.
no,
Got to know
I know
where you're
you're a
coming
lot.
from, man.
Sorry,
I said you got to know what it's coming from, where it's coming from, because it might not apply anymore.
100%. I kind of know you're a little bit pushed for time today, but I really appreciate you for coming on. Hopefully, we can do it more because I love picking your brain.
Yeah,
Um,
anytime. Yeah, I mean, I say anytime, but yeah, we'll definitely do this again.
Perfect. If you want to link your anything to so people can ask questions or dive into a little bit more of what you do.
Yeah, I mean, just social media is the easiest way to get a hold of me. My Instagram right there, or Facebook, Twitter. It's all the same. J. Bryan Mann. Actually, I don't even get on Twitter, X, whatever it's called anymore. It's just a bunch of people being
You can say
crybabies. And
you can
yeah,
say
I
it,
can't.
Richard.
I can't do it. I can't do it. So I got to stay off of there. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram, that's where I spend most of my time. So it's a lot easier to get a hold of me there than email, just because I'm busy, right? Texas A&M as an institution was 78,000 undergraduate students. Then you add the grad and faculty and everything on top of that. So the emails are, it's nothing for between this and everything else. They get a couple hundred emails in a day. So, but so while I might be really busy, I'm not that popular. I'm not that cool. So you can usually get at me on social media pretty easy, either by
No, I
DM
appreciate.
or by tagging me or something.
Yeah, I think you put it the best way when we met each other. It was like tag me because my kids love to see it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yep. They always love seeing me with everybody else. So yeah, you tag me on social media, and my kids will love you forever.
No, I appreciate you so much, Brian.
My pleasure.
Peace.